How's it going, William?
Good. Hi, Janae. Thanks for having me today.
Absolutely, man. Looking forward to the cool things that we're going to talk about. But before we do, just give me a quick overview of what is it that your company does?
Yeah, In8Bio is a cellular therapy company focused on developing a specific subset of your white blood cells, the gamma delta T cells for cancer. We've been focused on these cells since our scientific founder and chief scientific officer first made the observation that these particular cells are associated with better survival outcomes. This survival curve, or what we call Kaplan-Meier curve on your screen in the middle, was his first observation made in the mid-1990s. At that point, he made the observation that patients with leukemia who are undergoing transplantation, who ended up with higher levels of these cells, had better survival outcomes. You can see almost a 71% survival outcome versus only about a 20 who those who had low to normal levels. Over the subsequent 20 years, numerous other data sets on the left out of Stanford, on the right out of an Italian university, again demonstrating that high levels of these cells are associated with better survival outcomes in cancer patients.
What inspired the development of In8Bio's Delta X platform, though? But more importantly, also, how does it make the company's approach to cancer therapy unique? Because there's so many. What makes this one special?
I think much of that is actually driven by our scientific founder, and today my chief scientific officer, Dr. Lawrence Lamb. As I said, he first made the observations that gamma delta T cells are associated with the survival in the early 1990s. Here, our mission is to achieve what we call cancer zero. On the left-hand side of this image, you see a little wreath. This was actually given to him by a 6-year-old girl in 1996 who was being treated for her leukemia. Unfortunately, she died on Christmas Day. And it was that experience that drove him to start searching for what was making a difference between those patients who were surviving and those who were unfortunately passing of their disease. And it was that drove Dr. Lamb to actually make the association of these white blood cells with better survival outcomes. And so we've actually very mission focused based on this experience that Dr. Lamb went through. He spent the better part of 30 years in cell therapy and trying to make this original observation into a therapy.
Yeah, I talked to Ram and Claudia earlier today from IGC about Alzheimer's. And the reason I bring that up is just because you kind of get the reality of things that, hey, the things that y'all are working on, especially your company, they're impacting real life people and you're looking to take care of that. So let's move on to any major achievements or success stories you should kind of mention there as well, but any progressions in the clinical development that you'd like to share.
Yeah, I want to bring up one particular trial. As I mentioned earlier, he made this observation that patients with leukemia who are undergoing transplantation had better survival outcomes. INB-100 is our leukemia program. It's looking to infuse patients with leukemia who are undergoing transplantation with a donor-derived gamma delta T cell. As I said, Dr. Lamb has spent the better part of 25 years trying to make this observation into a therapy. The transplantation protocols, this was a publication in 2008 from Johns Hopkins University. On the left-hand survival curve, you can see after transplantation, at 1 year, roughly about 50% of patients will relapse of their disease. And unfortunately, if they relapse, on the right-hand side, you can see that those patients unfortunately die. At the American Society of Hematology meeting in December, we presented this data. We've treated 10 patients to date. So far, all 10 of them remain in remission. Yeah. 6 of the patients have passed 1 year. We actually have 3 patients out beyond 2 years and 2 patients out 3 years. We'll present an update likely this summer at the American Hematology Association meeting in June, looking really how many of these patients can we get to cross that 1 year mark without actually relapsing on their disease.
I'm going to mark it on my calendar to reach out to you early June so we can have some conversations after you make that information publicly available. Looking from a patient's perspective, though, right? I know you mentioned it a little bit briefly, but I want to get into a little bit more detail. What benefits do the gamma delta T cell therapies bring over the traditional cancer treatments that we've kind of been used to?
Look, ultimately, we think in order to have a very successful therapy, our thesis has to sit on these 3 legs. Durability, tolerability, and heterogeneity. As my scientific founder has often said, look, we don't care if you can shrink your tumor if you die on time within a month or two. We want to have long-term durable remissions. How can we, like in our trial, find ways to treat patients so that they're still living cancer-free 1 year, 2 years, and even 3 years post-treatment? The second, we want somewhat kinder and gentler therapies. Again, if there are significant toxicities that end up harming the patient, that doesn't matter. We believe the gamma delta T cells, with their unique ability to target tumor cells while leaving healthy tissues alone, give them a unique property. And finally, tumors are highly heterogeneous. There's a book that I actually like. It's by Azar Raza, who's at Columbia. She treats MDS. And as she describes it, we can't think of it as a single tumor, but as if we have a million different tumors. And so how do we target that heterogeneity? How do we target the entirety of the tumor? And we believe the gamma delta T cells can do that in order to achieve our mission of what we call cancer zero, the safe elimination of all cancer cells in our body.
Yeah, I mean, how often have loved ones heard it's the quality of life and not just extending the life that genuinely and truly matters, because it takes a toll, obviously, not just on the individual themselves, but also the loved ones and the families that are surrounding them. We've talked about how you're doing things different, right? Compared to the traditional cancer treatments. You've given us a little bit of insight on what gives you the edge, but give me a little bit more. How is In8Bio positioning itself to be a leader in this space?
Look, again, as I just mentioned, we're focused on durability, tolerability, and heterogeneity. We think one of the reasons that we're a leader is because we are a specific expert in gamma delta T cells. It's something that our scientific team has been working on for over 30 years now. These particular cells, as I said, have a unique capability to distinguish between cancer cells and healthy cells. And that's the challenge at the end of the day with cancer. It's that they are our own cells. There are numerous companies developing CAR Ts and other cellular therapies, often focused on alpha beta T cells or natural killer cells or NK cells. And we think the gamma delta T cells have that unique property where they can actually identify between your own cells, whether they are healthy or those who are transformed and are cancerous and should be eliminated.
Now, I've only got about a minute with you, so I'll give you the floor before we bring Mark up. Any final thoughts from you?
No, look, we've made a lot of progress in these gamma delta T cells. We are the leader in this particular space. We are looking forward to a very exciting 2024. We'll start kicking things off with the American Association for Cancer Research meeting starting in just a couple of weeks. And we look to be presenting data at numerous medical meetings from now through June, both targeting both the American Society of Clinical Oncology, or ASCO, and the European Hematology Association, or EHA, in June. So thank you very much.
Did you say HeHA? That's what it's called?
EHA.
EHA. Okay, I was like, hold on a second. You're having a little too much fun in this space. But William, thank you so much for joining us. And I look genuinely forward to the milestones you achieve and to talk about them as you release them to the public.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for having us today.